Welcome to the Saturday Cup of Joe podcast. This podcast is dedicated to EAS employees of the U.S. Postal Service and members of the National Association of Postal Supervisors. So, pour yourself a cup of coffee and join us for today's episode. And now, here's your host, Robert Wakefield.
Good morning, Branch 32, and good morning, Naps family, wherever you are listening. Welcome to the Saturday Cup of Joe podcast. It's presented by the Nashville Post Office Credit Union. I appreciate them so much. I am your host, Robert Wakefield, president of Branch 32. Thank you very much. All right, got a great show lined up for you. So let's go ahead and pour that first cup. Do you know at the Nashville Post Office Credit Union, you can save time and money by applying for a loan online. We strive to be your number one lending source, and you can apply for many of our loans right there off your computer. You can use our electronic signature service to be able to sign your loan documents without ever stepping into our branch. So take advantage of our great loan rates and the convenience of our online loan application. Visit npocu.org. And for our first cup this morning, we're going to continue our series on the ELM 651.3, the non-disciplinary corrective measures. Last podcast, we talked about the importance of coaching and how coaching is such an essential part of this whole thing. And we're going to talk a little bit today about the next section in that. It's probably one of the most underrated leadership tools in the entire ELM, if you want to get right down to it, and that's mentoring. Mentoring is the quiet force that builds confidence, it strengthens the organization, and it prevents problems long before they come up in corrective action. And and mentoring isn't just one of those nice-to-have things. There's a lot of data that backs this up. 98% of all U.S. Fortune 500 companies now have a mentoring program. That's from Mentor Loop. I did some Google search here. Companies with mentoring programs often see median profits more than double than those without. 87% of mentors and mentees report feeling more confident and empowered. And here's another stat for you. 86% of professionals with mentors are promoted faster. And mentored employees earn significantly more over time. Now, those numbers aren't very soft. They're hard evidence that mentoring works, and it works consistently. So let's talk about mentoring today. So let's talk about why it fits naturally into the ELM 651.3. Because it emphasizes early dialogue, it emphasizes coaching, and it emphasizes shared responsibility. And mentoring is the bridge that will connect all three of those. First of all, it creates trust before there's a problem. It builds competence before performance slips. And it strengthens relationships before conflict arises. Mentoring is a proactive leadership skill. And it's the kind of skill that keeps people from ever needing corrective action. So let me give you 3 illustrations on how this works and what they're called. This one is called the 5-minute fix. And I have actually experienced the 5-minute fix when it comes to being mentored. So here's the story. I've shared the story before on the podcast. But back in 1986, when I first started in the Postal Service, I was a window clerk. And we had to do manual 1412s. I mean, we had a 1412 pad, filled it in with ink. I mean, we had to manually add up all the numbers. It was way before the POS ones came out. I mean, these were years before that happened. But anyway, so we had to do that. And I always had trouble remembering to round date the upper right-hand corner where the date was to be stamped. So my postmaster at that time, he would come out there with my 1412 unstamped. He said, you didn't round date your 1412. So I would change the date to yesterday, put that in there, round date it, and hand it back to him. A few days later, he came back out and he said, you didn't round date your 1412 again. I said, oh, I'm new. I was just trying to take everything in. And he understood that. But by about the fourth or fifth time, he was getting a little tired of coming out there and making me round date that 1412. So he said, Robert, I'd like for you to come into the office just for a second. I got something I want to show you. And I said, okay. So I go in there, and in the office, there is one of the 013 pads, the scratch pads that we use. And next to it was a thing of ink that you dab your round dater in. And there was a round dater. And he said, okay, Robert, I want you to take that round dater, dip it into the ink, and hit that notepad. So I picked up the round dater, hit it in the ink, and I hit that notepad. He said, do it again. I picked up the round dater, hit the ink pad, round dated the blank piece of paper. He said, do it again. And so I did it a third time. And then he looked at me and he said, now that you've been fully trained, I want to be sure that you never forget to do that again. And I didn't. I never missed another one from that day forward of round dating that 1412. Fast forward 22 years. And as an EAS employee, I used the same 5-minute fix on one of my craft employees. He was a city carrier who kept forgetting to set the handbrake. And I would tell him, hey, don't forget to set your handbrake. Don't forget to set your handbrake. So I went out there and I told him to come out here to the LLV. I wanted to show him something. So he said, hop up in there. I want to show you how this thing works. And he says, okay. So I said, set that handbrake. And he pulled it and he set it. I said, release the handbrake. And he did. We did that 3 times. And I looked right at him and I said, now that you've been fully trained, I never want to have to mention setting your handbrake again. Well, he busted out laughing. He said, that is the best lesson I've ever had. And he never forgot to set that handbrake ever again. It's the 5-minute fix. It's 5 minutes. That's mentoring. That's the small investment that can help produce a permanent improvement. Now, our second illustration is what we like to call the confidence transfer. I read this. This is pretty good. This is something that's really, really neat. A supervisor in a large office felt overwhelmed. Imagine that. With route inspections and, grievances, call-ins, staffing. This supervisor was ready to quit. But a veteran supervisor took this other supervisor under his wing, and not to micromanage, but just to walk this supervisor through things. They met once a week for 20 minutes. He didn't give her any kind of rule book, but what he did was he gave her confidence. And within 6 months, she was leading her unit in attendance and scanning performance. And she would go on later to become a station manager. Now, listen, this is mirroring national trends. According to World Metrics, mentorship increases confidence by 42%. And 89% of mentees report improved networking and problem-solving skills. That's the one thing. Confidence isn't taught. It's transferred, and mentoring is the vehicle for that. Here's illustration number 3, the ripple effect. One of the most powerful mentoring stories that you'll ever hear in the Postal Service, it came from a plant where turnover was really, really high and morale was extremely low. And a supervisor began mentoring just one employee, just one. helping them to understand the expectations and navigating the conflict and building pride into their work. Well, that employee later mentored 2 others. And then those 2 mentored 3 others. Within a year, the unit's attendance improved, grievances dropped, and productivity rose. Mentoring doesn't add work, it multiplies leadership. So, how does that look in the Postal Service? Well, we got a lot of work to do on that. So here's where mentoring becomes a strategic advantage for EAS employees. Here are some things to think about. It builds a culture of early dialogue. Employees, they're far more likely to speak up when they can trust someone. And mentoring creates that trust. Number 2, it reduces the need for discipline. Most performance issues come from confusion, not defiance. And mentoring can clear the air, or even clear the fog, if you will, of what that confusion is. Number 3, it develops future leaders. If anything, the Postal Service needs is a pipeline of confident, capable supervisors. And mentoring is that pipeline. Here's a popular one in the Postal Service. It increases engagement. That's number 4. Employees with mentors are happier at their jobs, and they feel more valued. It's just that simple. It's the buzzword engagement. They're happier at their jobs. So here's some closing thoughts on our first cup about mentoring. Mentoring is leadership at its most human. It's one person saying to another, I see something in you worth developing. And when we do that consistently, intentionally, and early, we are fulfilling the very heart of ELM 651.3. It's support before discipline, it's guidance before correction, and it's partnership before problems. Mentoring is one of the most ignored things we do in the Postal Service, and it shouldn't be. And so I hope that everyone who hears this podcast will take on a new attitude and mentor those that need it. All right. That's going to wind up our first cup. Let's go ahead and pour that second cup. Since 1925, the Nashville Post Office Credit Union has been right here in Middle Tennessee, serving postal employees, their families, and our community with honest banking you can count on. Whether you're saving for something big, applying for a loan, or just looking for a place that treats you like a member and not a number, we're here for you. Visit us at 10 Rachel Drive or online anytime. The Nashville Post Office Credit Union, people helping people since 1925. And for our second cup today, I want to remind all Branch 32 members that you have a monthly meeting coming up, and that is going to be taking place on April the 28th. The time is at 6 p.m., and we will meet at the Nashville Post Office Credit Union. And when I made that announcement, when I was thinking about making that announcement, it made me curious, what is your meeting schedule for your branch? How often do you guys meet? I want you to let me know. Go to napsbranch32.org, and in the chat feature, that's featured on the right, a little dialogue balloon, whatever that's called, you can go in there and you can tell me what branch you are and how often do you meet. Do you meet once a month? Do you meet once every 2 months? Do you meet even number months, odd number months? What is it? So tell me what you do. Tell me. We meet 10 times a year. We skip 2 months. One is July, and I think the other one is in November. And we skip those 2 months. But we meet once a month, usually on the fourth Tuesday of each month. That varies depending on holiday schedules. But it's a great time to get together. If you've never been to a branch meeting, let me encourage you to go to one, because it's just an opportunity for you to meet people that are going through the same things that you are going through. And that's important. It's important that you get to meet folks that are experiencing the things that you're experiencing. And like we talked about in the first cup, mentoring. You might find a mentor there. You never can tell. So attend your branch meeting coming up, and be sure you let me know. You can even send me an email at SaturdayCupOfJoe@gmail.com. Well, so that's going to do it for today's episode of the Saturday Cup of Joe podcast, presented by the Nashville Post Office Credit Union. I really would appreciate it if you would share this show with your branch. Tell everybody that you know. Call your neighbors. Call your congressman. Do all those things, because we really want this podcast to grow. So thanks so much for listening. I'm Robert Wakefield. And remember, every great weekend starts with a great cup of Joe. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for tuning in to the Saturday Cup of Joe podcast. Please note that the views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of Robert Wakefield and do not necessarily reflect the views of the National Association of Postal Supervisors. We welcome your questions and comments, so send those to SaturdayCupOfJoe@gmail.com.